Hey folks, Doug Blake with Body Design University. In this video, I'm going to give you a little recap review in chapter 23 on those issues related to dealing with older adults. Chapter 23, final chapter of the textbook. This begins, well, at least the older adult part of this begins on page 763, chronic health conditions, special population. So that's chapter 23. One thing to keep in mind as you go through the entire chapter, it's the same with each of these, is that you're going to have at least two tables associated with this particular condition or issue that we're talking about. In the case of older adults, that's going to be tables 23.3 and 23.4. Again, all of the conditions from obesity to youth training with youth, older adults, cancer, arthritis, you're going to have one table for the physiological and training considerations, as well as the basic exercise guidelines. So that's going to be table 23.3 and 4. But for the older adults, it begins here again on page 763, and NASM's just going to give you some sort of background information related to the aging population. Keep in mind there are some clear issues that no matter what the fitness level of this older individual is, they are still older. And so there are clear distinctions as you get older, irrespective of how fit you look and how fit you are. And there are some incredibly fit 70, 80, 90-year-olds out there that are just doing incredible things. It's remarkable. However, they're still 70, 80, 90, which means their physiology is different, even if they are in, quote, great fit condition. Sidebar over here, sidebar terms. It's a good idea. Obviously, mortality is just the risk, risk of dying, death. Arteriosclerosis, which is just the decrease in elasticity, pliability of the arteries, which are muscles, versus arthrosclerosis. Listen to the difference. Arteriosclerosis, arterio versus arthro. Arteriosclerosis, decreased elasticity, pliability of the arterial walls itself. The endothelium is where you're going to see this increase in plaque buildup when you have arthrosclerosis. So arteriosclerosis, decreased pliability, elasticity. Arthrosclerosis, think plaque buildup, right? Inflammation, internal inflammatory responses. You can read through it. Good idea at this point on page 764 to review your numbers for blood pressure. 120/80 is sort of the number, but normal is below that, below 120. So it's got to be 119/79 to be normal. It's elevated if it's either 120 to 129 or above 80. And then you got stage 1 and stage 2 hypertension. Know those numbers. Hypertensive crisis, 180/120. Emergency room, urgent care, something like that. Bottom of page 764, clear statement of what you see, a reduction in physiological markers as you get older. You have maximum attainable heart rate, so your max heart rate goes down. We also see a decrease in cardiac output. One of the reasons for that is generally going to be because of stroke volume decreases. And, normally you'll see resting heart rate actually go up, either stabilize or go up as you get older. Remember, cardiac output is a number of is the total volume of blood ejected out of the heart during a minute's time. So it's heart rate times stroke volume. So when we see a reduction in cardiac output, it's either one or the other, could be both, but generally you're going to see a reduction, right? So if cardiac output decreases, you get it? Cardiac output decreases, we're seeing a reduction. If the heart rate doesn't change, we're seeing a reduction in stroke volume. Generally, as you become more fit, you'll see an increased stroke volume, okay? An increased stroke volume means that your cardiac output would be higher over a minute's time. So it could be that, or you could have a decrease in heart rate, stroke volume stays the same. You got these two variables. Cardiac output is going to adjust according to one of those or both of those. And so reduced cardiac output generally, again, as you get older, it's simply because the stroke volume goes down. Then you have reduction in muscle mass. And this is just a normal process of aging. One of the things we do know nowadays is that it's kind of like bone density loss. We can forestall the loss of muscle mass, or at least the decrease, the actual total loss as you get older. We can minimize that by doing what? Consuming adequate nutrients and protein in the diet as you get older, and resistance training. You will lose muscle mass. Okay. You don't have a choice. That's the way it goes. Why? Because that's a function of your endocrine system, your hormones. The goal is to keep as much muscle mass as possible as it decreases. So we don't want to lose muscle mass as we go older like this. We want to lose it gradually, just like bone density, like for women to have a minimal loss of bone density as they get older. Resistance training, folks. Resistance training, proper nutrition, overall balance and coordination. Again, the reasons behind this you could, of course, look at, and of course they give you some of that information. But vestibular health, things like that, are going to affect your balance. Okay, it's just the nature of the beast. Coordination, neuromuscular efficiency, it's kind of connected to balance, except this is talking about the neuromuscular system in general. With balance, we're talking about potentially more issues related to inner ear or vestibular issues. So coordination, neuromuscular efficiency, connective tissue, elasticity, i.e., your ligaments, the fascia that covers and surrounds structures in the muscular and nervous system. They have to have some level of stretch and elasticity to them as your body goes through its normal motions. Well, that tends to decrease. Again, for any number of reasons. Bone mineral density. Well, of course, I just said that. We're talking about osteoporotic conditions, osteopenia. So bone mineral density, it goes down. It will, but your goal is not to eliminate. You will lose bone density, men as well. But we have more testosterone than women, so we tend to hang on to the mineralization components of bones better and longer. But men get osteoporosis as well. It's just a normal aging process. We want to minimize that as much as we can. And again, that's going to come from resistance, generally resistance type training. And that's really key. And of course, anabolic hormones, growth hormone, insulin, testosterone. That's generally the one we're talking about. The conversion of testosterone, what we call aromatization, the conversion of free testosterone into estrogen or estrogenic compounds. And that occurs in the liver. And what happens, of course, is that the anabolic activity of, and I'm just talking about testosterone in particular, is diminished because of its conversion. If there's either too much of it, or the aging process just causes a higher level of conversion of the free testosterone into estrogenic sort of byproducts. As a friend of mine, a physician friend of mine, used to say, is, as we get older, guys, we become more like women hormonally in that respect. Now, he's being pseudo facetious, but it's kind of true. As our testosterone, normal testosterone production continues as we get older, we do see a higher level of what's known as aromatization. You can look it up. It's interesting, but it's not going to help you a whole lot, because our clients are simply not, I hope, going to be using anabolic androgenic hormones. But anabolic hormones and their activity and capability to produce anabolic activity in muscle cells, for instance, that decreases as we get older. And so as you read through it, decrease in the functional capacity, including potential significant reductions in strength, endurance, range of motion, yada, yada, proprioception. Again, these are things you should sort of common sense know already. And And so as you read through this, for instance, you'll be saying, "Oh yeah, exactly. Look at your aging parents, grandparents, if you're in that age range, and you will see the normal degenerative processes occurring. We would want to minimize the degenerative processes. That's what we do. That's why you got to know some of this stuff. So proprioception, body's ability to naturally sense its general orientation. You know where you are in time and space. Close your eyes and do you know where you're at in time and space? Yeah, my nose is here, right? My hand is here. These are my, proprioception, knowing where you're at sort of in time and space. And that still connects to balance, coordination, things like that. Your PAR-Q, of course, is important to use. I don't know anybody that I've ever trained where I haven't done an intake form type of scenario with, but you have to do some functional assessments too. It's actually helpful as individuals get older. And now you're on table 23.3. I've done videos on both of these tables. Just a quick recap: physiological considerations, maximal oxygen uptake, VO2, maximal exercise heart rate, pulmonary function will all decrease with age, right? In a sense, I'm not worried so much about that. I know it's going to happen. I take an individual where they're at and I work them from there. And I try to minimize the overall degenerative processes that we all go through. So, implications of health and fitness training. This column is giving you some ideas on how you should deal with the general population of older adults. And that's going to be very different from a 65-year-old to an 80-year-old. Okay. Obviously. So, resistance training recommended. Go through each of these in this column and make sure you not only read it, but understand why that is the case. I'll give you an example. There is a higher rate of both diagnosed and undetected heart disease in the elderly. Well, that's important to know. Well, what are the implications then for your training? Knowledge of pulse assessment during exercise is critical, as is monitoring for chronic disease, signs and symptoms. In other words, you got to use your common sense and you got to use discretion. You got to be careful, but having run a hospital wellness center and dealing with folks with chronic conditions and older adults, taking their blood pressure, if they have a pulse, a pulse testing device, right? Even during their training, you can have them come and get blood pressure taken care of. Now, again, obviously, what I'm saying is this depends on the individuals you're dealing with and the sort of the environment that you are training people in. Okay. That's kind of the whole point of this, is that when you look at this information, you're talking about a special population. Some of you will never deal with special populations. The only special population you might ever deal with is a person that has hypertension, diabetes, and you'll see those for sure. Maybe some heart disease issues that have been dealt with or are being managed by physicians. Okay. But in some cases, and so you might see people with obesity, but when we're talking about like older adults, the focus here is not on healthy, fit older adults that show no signs of obvious physical or chronic diseases. However, when you do get that, and you will, it again, like I say, some of you may never get it. Some of you might actually like to deal with individuals like that. This information right here is going to be very, very valuable. So I'm not gonna go into these tables. Like I say, we've done videos on them before. From a testing perspective, this is where most of your questions would be coming from. So I hope more than anything that this video gave you a little bit more insight into dealing with this particular part of chapter 23. So of the older adult population, if that is the case, please do us a favor in the comment box, write the word understand, or if you appreciate the information, write that in as well. If you have questions, or you need even further explanation of any of this information, just write that in the comment section below. Also, keep in mind that if you are interested in getting the full suite of exam study materials, click on the link below in the description box. That will take you to the NASM exam study, and you can look at that as well. If you have not done so, swing over to the Facebook page, our private study group. And there, remember, every Wednesday night as well, we do a Quizlet live exam study. We use a specific study set for Quizlet. If you've never heard of it, you got to go in, you got to sign up and use it. And for 30 minutes, and that starts at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 6 to 6:30 every Wednesday night, we do a live exam study that for sure is going to help you to deal with, learn, and then ultimately pass your NASM exam. As always, have a great week, and we'll see you next week. Thanks.